Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be reviewing volume 17 in the series No Matter How I Look at It, It's You Guys' Fault, I'm Not Popular by Nico Tanigawa. So this is what the cover looks like. I've been reading this series for a while and we're on volume 17, so I'm going to assume in this review that you don't mind if I talk about things that happened previously in the series. So let's talk about today's book. So a little background before we actually talk into volume 17 because one of the cats knocked something over. Because this is a key turning point in my reading journey of this series. Back in 2021, I read volumes 1 through 16 while in a different library district. I was reading it, I was loving it, but at volume 16, I moved into a different library district, and I just kind of dropped the ball on a lot of the series I was reading. I moved and I never restarted reading this series. When I decided I wanted to continue reading this series, it had been quite a bit of time, so I decided to start all the way back at the beginning. So my reviews of this series so far have been for volumes 1 through 16, which were technically rereads, even though the further I got along in the series, the less I remembered about what had happened. Volume 17 is the first time I am reading a truly brand new entry in the series for me, so this was entirely new to me and I had no clue what was going to happen. In volume 16, or rather, let's talk about the series as a whole. The series as a whole follows our protagonist, Tomoko, who's here on the cover. She is a high school girl just going through her high school woes. She went to high school assuming she was going to be quite popular and all the boys were going to like her. She was going to have a great time, and that didn't really happen. She wound up struggling socially, especially her first year, being very isolated and having to do a lot of growth as a person to recognize that a lot of her behaviors aren't really appropriate, or that she was digging herself into a rather deep hole in a dark spiral where she continued to isolate people around her while also being upset about being isolated. This series, I feel like, really highlights personal growth during a tumultuous time of development, the adolescent period, where people tend to be very vulnerable and crave more than anything else pure acceptance. And when you don't get that, it can be quite lonely and isolating. So I feel like this book would resonate with anyone who had any time where they were lonely or isolated in middle school, high school, that period of time in life. It is a very tumultuous time of life, so it makes sense that people would go through these difficult times. Tomoko, however, had to recognize that a lot of her problems were self-caused, as a lot of problems I feel like in our lives tend to be. She was creating the problems or perpetuating the problems that she was having by her own behavior, and the series has been Tomoko growing as a person. Now, Tomoko is not a perfect individual. She still says and does a lot of things that are borderline inappropriate, even though sometimes her friends find it funny. She's still growing as a person, which is to be expected. She is, 16, 17 years old at this point. She's not fully developed. The brain doesn't fully develop until your mid-20s, so it makes sense that she still isn't fully pulled together as a person, and growing as a person is a lifelong journey. You never stop learning, you never stop growing, or you shouldn't stop learning, or you shouldn't stop growing, so it makes sense that not all her character flaws are gone, and for that reason I find this series to be very realistic. Now let's talk about volume 16, which preceded volume 17, naturally, in which Tomoko, who has at this point developed quite a bit of a social group and a social network, it did take her some time, but she did develop that social network, that social group. She has been suspended, which is about the most daring and brave thing that she has done in her entire high school career. She was caught riding a motorcycle with another student, which violates school rules, and so she's having to serve an in-school suspension. She's not allowed to talk to her friends, she just has to sit in a classroom alone, with the other girl that she was suspended with, and do the class handouts by herself all day. And this suspension is over in volume 17, so it's finished up and it's happening. She's finished up. She has to do a meeting with her mom, like the principal, I think maybe a guidance counselor or something, and herself to kind of talk about what happened and how she was not going to do this again and how this was bad and all that. And there's a moment where Tomoko, leaving the suspension, goes to talk to her friends, and she tells her mom that she needs to go talk to her friends, and there's a scene where she's going to speak to everyone that she wasn't allowed to speak with over the last week. And you get this sense, because you're getting this view from her mom, that the suspension wasn't really the most worrying thing going on with her and her daughter. She was more worried about her daughter's social life. And I feel like it has to be very concerning when you see your daughter, who I assume she loves very deeply, struggle so hard to make friends, to have a social group, to interact normally with her peers. It can be very difficult, and it's not really something that you can always help with. So you get the sense that Tomoko's more worried about the fact that she's in trouble with her mom for the suspension, and Tomoko's mom is more worried about her social group. This suspension is just something that she got through, but she's more worried about her social group. So after the suspension, when she sees Tomoko speaking with the social group, you start to get the sense that her mom is starting to become less and less worried about that aspect of Tomoko's life, which is kind of a sweet moment because she's starting to realize that she has gotten through or getting through this difficult period of her life, and she's grown and learned quite a bit, and her mom has a lot less to worry about, and things are just starting to come together for Tomoko. Volume 17 focuses on the last summer vacation. There's college coming up, and the students are having to study for their college entrance exams because they're third years. I think I've kind of gleaned, I have not looked this up officially, but I have kind of gleaned from reading that the school year calendar is a little different in Japan, because in the United States, where I'm from, you start school in September, you do your entire grade, like if you're in 7th grade, you do your entire grade until May, then you stop, then you have summer vacation from June, July, August, and then you start again in September, but then you'll be in 8th grade, so you advance a grade. It looks like Tomoko isn't advancing a grade after summer vacation. That somehow falls in the middle of the school year. So she has this summer vacation in the middle of the school year, but she'll still be a third year when she comes back. However, the focus is now looking forward, college, what college people are going to. And there's this decision that they're going to be going to a study training camp, and it's going to be this sleepaway camp. It feels like something that maybe started more for sports camps, but they also have a training camp, which is basically one big massive study session with professional teachers to help prepare you for entrance exams in various subjects. So Tomoko and all her friends have decided to go to that camp, and Volume 17 really feels like a setup for Volume 18, which is going to be about the training camp. So I felt like this book really was about setting things up. It was about the part of the summer vacation before going to the training camp, which is when I feel like things are going to get quite serious about the future. And they're doing things like going to a baseball game or maybe going to an arcade, but most of it, the focus is about the upcoming training camp, which isn't going to happen in Volume 17, or it doesn't entirely start in Volume 17. They start going to the training camp, but Volume 18, I feel like, is going to be the main focus of this. So Volume 17 is just something we're going to have to get through, the start of summer, all of that. Around Volume 17, though, now I'm starting to think about the direction the series is going, and I do wonder what direction they're going to take this. Tomoko has developed this group of friends, and as I mentioned, there's still a lot of growth to do. Growing is a lifelong activity, but she's no longer trying to get over her fears of speaking with people. She's no longer trying to become less socially isolated. She's now thinking about her future, so I do wonder where the authors are going to go. I don't know if they're going to continue this series into college or where they're going to take the direction of the series. It's just something that I'm starting to think about in this volume, because Tomoko has definitely developed that friend group and developed those social connections that for a large portion of the series she was lacking. I enjoyed Volume 17. It's been on my to-read list for a while, so I'm super glad to get it knocked off the list, checked off, and I'm excited to see where the rest of the series goes. If you've been reading the series, please let me know how you feel about it, how you like it. I would love to hear about it. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.